Go live. And here we go. Let them all in.
Woohoo!
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I see
Yay,
one,
hi,
I see
guys.
two, I see three. Hold on, this always jumps on a little late and then it is an echo. Hold on. Hold the phone.
I got my here.
Okay, good. Welcome everybody to our March edition of the I Love Coaching Real Talk. Real stands for relevant, experiential, and in your case, learning. Though if you're a coach inside of I Love Coaching, it stands for relevant, experiential, authentic leadership. So what we intend to bring you all today, our topic today is all about numbers, knowing your numbers, the value of numbers. And for some people, numbers makes them get a little uncomfortable. And we hope that by the end of this, that you will be not as uncomfortable with numbers. That's going to be our language today is numbers, numbers, numbers. So we have two coaches. We have one coach coming on here shortly. We have Miss Julie Downey. Julie, I'll let you introduce yourself. Go for it.
Hello, Julie Downey from Indianapolis. I have been a realtor for 25 years and a coach for about 2.5 years now. So yeah, happy to be here.
Coming to us live from the Buckeye State, Mr. Coach Troy Marsh. Troy, who are you?
How are you? Troy Marsh here from, like you said, Columbus. Actually, I'm from the Columbus, the Ohio State University, so not just the Buckeye State. And I have been a real estate agent since 2004, and I've been a coach probably about 2 years now. I'm also an investor, and my passion is numbers. So I do a market update every single month on the state of the U.S. housing market. And what things to look for, as well as our local market here in Central Ohio. So this topic is definitely my passion. So looking forward to it.
Got it. Perfect. And then we also have Coach Chris Welton, who will be coming to us live from Orlando, Florida area. He is our resident mortgage coach individual who is in the mortgage space, owns a mortgage company. And so he'll be joining us here shortly to give us that side of the numbers conversation. So coaches, let's dive into this. So a real talk with numbers looks like this. Before we go into your own approach, I want to have some conversations around what are you feeling from your clients around when you bring up the word numbers or tracking your numbers? How do they respond or act when you bring that up? What do you think? What do they do? Because I know what mine do. Mine start to look like this. And then even on Zoom, the eye contact goes away. How do yours react?
Same, exact same. Now, so I've got some good ones who have understood the value of tracking, some that are on here today. And once they've got that, all that goes away, right? A few ahas from your tracking, and then you're like, oh, I get this. Okay, let's roll. So it depends on where they are in their tracking journey and knowing their numbers.
Got it. Love it. Troy, what about you? How do your clients respond and or react when it comes to a numbers conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, unfortunately, mine aren't any different for the most part. I do think that a lot of it does have to do, as Julie said, with seeing success. So a lot of it is getting that train started. And then as you begin to see success from it, usually people become less afraid of it. But I think, frankly, a lot of real estate agents in particular, where, nobody learns even how to sell real estate in real estate school, let alone how to run a business. And so I think a lot of real estate agents were nurses, teachers, whatever, and they really just don't have the experience of running a business, and therefore numbers are foreign. And so you hear things like, I just want to do better this year than I did last year. And that to most people means when their 1099 comes out in January, they're like praying that it's more than last year. And so I think the biggest piece of advice that I usually have with somebody that falls into that category is, let's start small. Like, let's just find what's the most important thing we can track. And then, keep layering on. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is, like with every New Year's resolution, is they try to jump in and track everything starting on day one, and that becomes overwhelming. And so it's an all or nothing type approach, and usually it ends up being nothing by February. So that's where that's where having a coach, I think, is a huge value add in terms of the consistency of that.
Yeah, for sure. And you said that we don't all come from a business background. I'll be honest, I came from a tennis background, right? So I got to feed tennis balls. I got to play a sport to try to make money. So when I entered into the real estate world, the numbers were definitely not something that I was accustomed to dealing with. So Julie, you drive the ship here for a minute. Tell us what do you do in the number space related to clients? How do you handle? Coach us up for a second.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to understand what we're doing with the numbers, right? Like, why are the numbers even important? And I always say the two things we're trying to uncover, right, is where there's gaps, where are we missing the boat, right? Or where are we winning? So oftentimes, if we're not tracking that, we don't know. We might think we're winning somewhere because that's how it feels. But when you look at the numbers, you could see something completely different. Same with uncovering those gaps. And the biggest thing is to track, like Troy said, in baby steps, right? So first thing is make sure you've got a place to track. You need a system, you need a spot to gather your numbers, and then you need that system that's going to get them into the place you're tracking. Okay, so let's break it down. So a spreadsheet, right? Every week you should be tracking some key numbers. Okay. However, throughout the week, you've got to figure out how you're going to gather all those numbers because they're coming from here and here and here and here and here to get to the one space to learn from. Right. So that's the first thing is figure out how. Like Troy said, start with baby steps, right? Start one thing and track it week after week until you're like, okay, I've got that. I figured out how to do that and nail it every time, and then add another one. So let's talk about the gaps and the wins for a minute. So uncovering your gaps is huge because that's where you're going to learn from, right? So I can share some of the gaps that I'm seeing right now in coaching a lot and that a lot of people are working to fill. I would say the biggest one that I'm seeing is the gap in the strength of your sphere. Right? So our spheres, we're used to performing at a certain level. That 12 to 2 number is what we hear a lot in real estate, right? For every 12 clients, you're going to get 2 pieces of business. Now it's probably 3 times that. It may mean that it's taken 36 people in your sphere to get those pieces of business, right? So number one, we're seeing that shift. So if you're missing the boat on how valuable your sphere is to start with, you don't have any idea how to double down on that and increase it to fill that gap. The second one I'm seeing a huge gap in is obviously conversations. For whatever reason, it's the hardest one for us to get ourselves to. However, what I find is that most people think they're having a lot more conversations than they are. And so when you learn to track those, you start realizing, wow, I might be missing the boat a lot more. Another one I'm seeing in our tracking of conversations is where are our leads coming from? So back to that strength of your sphere, right? If we're making our conversations every week and it's to our sphere and we're not getting the results we need, now we have to go look somewhere else where we might be able to get those leads. So we got to think outside the box. We might need to go somewhere we're not used to going, try it for a little bit. But the bottom line is we got to get the leads. So you got to know what's working and what's not, to know then where to go to fill those gaps. Is that helpful?
Yep, that was great.
That was great. And Adam, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Julie, I'd love for you to go through the process that we talked about a little bit earlier today about how you had some clients that were struggling with Sphere. How did you get to the end result? And I'd love for you to share kind of what your ultimate solution was for them, and so far what have those results looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and she's on here, but we took a look at her sphere and realized, okay, the leads aren't coming in like we like and what we want and what we need. So where else could we go to get higher leads? And what we found out is that taking a look back at expireds, right? Our market is shifting. Sometimes we're having to go back to the basics again and to the things we haven't been used to doing because our sphere has been supporting our business. So when we did that, we went back and said, okay, what kind of hole do we need to fill and how might we fill it? And she went out and started attacking expireds and now is getting the leads and now is getting the appointments. So it doesn't mean we've gone away from Sphere, right? That Sphere has to keep staying there for that consistent business. However, what we realized, and within 1 month of tracking, that we had a gap and we could go get expireds and see if it would fill it. In a small amount of time, in a few weeks, we realized, yeah, that's filling the gap. And we were able to course correct really quickly, right? We will not start Q2 with as big of a deficit had we continued on that path and gone, oh, wait, what are we missing here? So that was huge. What we're seeing in our market is that expireds are just coming back like crazy. I went and looked and there are twice as many expired starting out 2023 as there were last year in our market. And it's still whatever number we're seeing each week on the average, it doubles that last week of the month, first week of the new month. So agents are still listing things to expire at the end of the month. So if you do nothing else, block off your 4th week of every month to focus on expireds.
That's good. That's really good.
Awesome.
Now I want to go back to something here real quick. Strength of SOI, conversations and lead source. And I love what you said here. They think they're having more conversations than they really are.
Yeah. You know,
Go ahead.
it's funny because I have tracked this also, right? I'm a numbers person, so I'm tracking everything all the time. But yeah, I started having people before they'd start going through their database. Tell me, how many people do you think you've talked to every single year in your database? Every single one of them. Oh, 85 to 90%. When they actually went through it, it was more like 15 to 20%. And the reason is because we have on the top of our mind those key people, right, that are cycling. We only have room for 15 to 20% of them. So we're going to think we're talking to everybody. But man, that's a huge aha when you sit down and look at all the people you aren't talking to and all the value that could be there.
Mm-hmm. Curious, when you go back to the systems to put them in, right? I know I can speak for myself. I know I can speak for some of the people that are even on here is great. I love having these pieces of paper float around my desk for tracking my numbers. I'm tracking my numbers, though they don't go live somewhere. What would you suggest as someone for data entry of that type of stuff?
You got a time block, right? So if you don't have 30 minutes every week in your schedule to just track your numbers, you'll never do it. And then you're like, oh my God, now we're at the end of a quarter. I can't possibly go back to January, right? And if you do it right, it should take less than 5-10 minutes. If it's taking you longer than that, you're not doing something right in your week to stay on top of your activities. So that's what I would say, having a good place for it to live, and then making sure you time block for it every single week to round out your week, put your numbers in and start anew the next. It also allows you to audit your week, right? How'd I do? Where'd I end up? And what, if any, changes do I need to make for next week? Again, to find it fast and fix it fast and not let anything build up over time.
That's good. That's really good. Troy, I want to come to you in just one second. So I want to share with everybody, we practice as coaches what we preach. So I want to share everybody this. Now, be careful. This is high tech right here, and this is highly confidential. So just be careful here for a second. Look at this. It said my weekly Big Rock reports. Now, this is from when I was a team leader and I was recruiting. I'm like, careful. This is you're gonna want to maybe take a screenshot of this. So this is how I used to track. I would track with dash marks, and this was conversation. Well, who I was calling, conversations, appointments set, appointments held. And I would do this every single day with the tracking and then get back to the beginning of the month. So I knew here was the month summary. Now be careful. This is highly confidential and very, very techy. Though what I did is I was able to gain my time, right? So I knew based on 289 calls, I'd had 126 conversations, 43% conversion rate. I set 38 appointments. Troy, I was a damn good team leader. I held 26 of them, even though it's supposed to be 40, and I had 16 join, right? So, but I could track this, and I actually tracked how much company dollar was coming in, so on and so forth. So my point of saying that is, to Julie's point, it's got to go live somewhere. And if it's as high tech as this, you're winning, right?
Yeah, keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Hey, Kim, did you like the month that he picked there to use as an example? 16 joined. 38 appointment,
Let
all
me
that.
go, hold on, let
I'm
me go
sure
look at
everyone looks
February.
that way, right?
Yeah.
Well, February was a short month, so we can't look at February.
Right.
March was, March. Yeah, no, you're right. Okay, Troy. So what do you do? Talk to us about your coaching clients. How do you coach them up in the number space, and talk to us from A to Z?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it all starts with putting a plan together. So it starts with the 411, which a lot of people, and the 135. So identifying what you want to accomplish. And I really think, like Julie said, I mean, it depends on where they're at in their journey as to how deep we're going to go on numbers. Sometimes just getting people to assess their week at the end of the week is a huge step. But ultimately, without the numbers, you really can't help much, because when we don't know how many people we're talking to, then we're getting an emotional response, right? And so if they say, yeah, I talked to enough people, well, how many is enough? And the reality is, if they didn't go on enough appointments, then they probably didn't have enough go into contract, and therefore they're eventually not going to have enough closed. So I think the biggest thing that we're doing with the 411 is moving the conversation from the lagging indicators to the leading indicators, right? So instead of focusing on how many closings we have, we're going to move our mindset to how many in contracts, and then from how many in contracts, we're going to move even further up the funnel to how many appointments, and then eventually how many contacts. And then the last thing is how many pieces of action did you take? How many times did you actually try to get in touch? And like Julie said, unfortunately, we're in a market right now where a lot of the numbers that we're working definitely 12 months ago, but in some cases 6 to 9 months ago, just aren't working the same anymore. And if you're waiting to see the lagging indicators show up, then you're going to be 3 to 6 months behind, right? What we always say, specifically in real estate, what you're doing today is going to show up 3 to 6 months from now. And so what we're really focusing on is where do we need to be on those front end actions or those leading indicators, and then talking about those every single week in our coaching call. And if we're not hitting them, if we're not hitting the things that should be coming as a result of those actions, then we need to decide, like Julie said, do we need to double down, triple down, 4x that conversation or that number of actions, or do we need to pivot and try to add in a second source in order to make up for those? I just loved when she said that earlier, because your sphere, we were talking and I was telling her how in my business, I'm 40 years old. My sphere, a lot of my sphere is in their second or third home, where their move is very much because they want to move and not because they have to move. And so you have to talk to a lot more people who want to move in order to find someone that actually has to move. So your choices are to either talk to a lot more people in your sphere and or add more people to your sphere, or go out and find the expired that already raised their hand, and then create that new stream of contacts that frankly 12 months ago didn't exist in most markets. But if we're not pivoting, we're never going to be able to pivot if we don't recognize the fact that we're in a bad situation until sometimes it's too late.
Yeah, Troy, let's go back for a second and do two things. I want, maybe there's people on here that are not in coaching that are not familiar with some of the coaching tools that we use. So the 411, and then also defining a lead and lag measure.
Yeah, so the 411 could be a whole hour and a half long class, but at the end of the day, what we're doing is taking your annual goals, or even now we've put that on steroids, so we're up to 5 years. So moving from 5 years back to 3 years, back to this year. And then most importantly, what's going to change on a weekly basis is what are your goals for this year, and what this month do you have to do to accomplish those? And then each week we're going to decide, what do we have to do this week in order to make sure that we hit that monthly goal. And then ultimately that weekly goal needs to be reflected on your calendar.
Yeah, Love
So
that.
that's your 411. And then your leading indicators are going to be the things that you're going to do on a daily basis in most cases that are going to eventually result in the ultimate goal or hitting your goal. So if we use real estate as an example, picking up the phone and calling 5 people a day or 10 people a day or 20 people a day will result in 2 closings per month on average. So some months it might be 3, some months it might be 1, or, you know, obviously you can 5, 10x that number depending on what your annual goal is.
And what I love about lead indicators is they are, if you've read the book 4DX or the 4 disciplines of execution, it talks about lead measures being influenceable. And what I love about the word influenceable is simply just that you influence those numbers. Are you negotiating with that number? When you see that you have to do X number, are you negotiating with yourself to the positive, or are you negotiating with yourself to the opposite of that, right? That's why I love those lead numbers. As we sit there and coach our clients, look at those lead numbers and actions as well, and they all tell a story, right? That's what I love about numbers in general, is that everything tells a story. Speaking of story, coming to us from the Sunshine State, which I believe is Florida, right? Sunshine State. Coach Chris Welton, hey, introduce yourself here and talk to us about numbers, buddy.
All right. I am calling from the Sunshine State. It's not very sunny today, but that's okay. That will change very quickly. I am someone who's interested in the numbers to the point of I rather watch the news on business shows than I would ESPN. So I'm this kind of, and Troy and I have become very close, and we geek out on the numbers quite a bit. So I'm not going to bore you with all that, but the first thing I'm going to do is, there's my link tree. My contact information is in there. So click on that. I just got done recording a podcast a minute ago, which is the up and coming best podcast in America. That will be there at some point. So you could say you met me on this Real Talk. So I am vice president of sales for a mortgage company out of Orlando, Florida. And we are actually expanding into the Southeast as we speak. Is there anybody on here from the Charleston area? Anybody from Charleston area? No, anybody besides Adam? Okay. Well, I will be in Charleston Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week to make connections with realtors. So I'm going to hop into some screen share real quick. The first thing I'm going to do for us is, oh, sorry, guys, I lost you for a second.
Well, Chris, while you're doing that, I'll fill some time here. Adam, one of the things that I thought was awesome that you talked about, and I'm so excited to listen to this from Chris, by the way, but one of the things that Julie and I talked about earlier, which I thought was amazing when we talk about the shifting market, is the fact that what was that study that you read where they talked about how most agents grow their business? And when someone doubles or triples their business, most of the time it comes from adding agents versus actually doubling their production.
Yeah. That was a, you know what? I believe I just closed that article. I did. Okay. So here's what it said. It basically said, on average, teams increase that are actually out there building their companies with new people by 107% year over year. Traditional agents that are part of a team, though, increased by 28% on the team year over year. And what they showed was that 100%, if you looked at it as a whole, 100%, only 28% of that 100% came from inside agents. Roughly that other 75% came from agents that they brought into the organization as new revenue. And I was just blown away by that, because again, as we used to run companies and we would look at our increase in revenue year over year, or at least setting the goals, we would look at that and say, how much should we expect from internal and how much should we expect from external? And here was a study that came out and said, you can expect on average 28% to come from internal, which means that the other portion of that needs to come from external. And Troy, it was a really neat article, and just I can find that and we can send it out to everybody that's participating today.
So yeah, and so what I was taking away from that though is when we think about what Julie said earlier, that a 12-2 ratio might be moving to a 20-2 or 30-2 or 40-2. You're literally not just asking the individual agent out there to double their business or their activities, but sometimes triple or quadruple. And what we know is that history says that most of the time they can only go up by 20 to 30%. And so I think when we're talking to agents about how we're gonna go through this shift, I mean, I know in our market where our sales are down 25 to 30% pretty much on average over the last six months or so. And in some markets, it's significantly higher than that. And so when you're coaching somebody or talking to somebody about how they're going to even just meet what they did last year, I think a lot of people highly underestimate the amount of the increase in activities that are going to be needed. Like, it sounds really great to say that we gain market share in a shift, and what we gain, we don't give back. But is everybody really willing to do the amount of work that is needed? Because you're either going to have to do a heck of a lot more personally, or you need to shift your focus to going out and bringing it in from the outside. So
That's right.
I just thought,
So Troy, I was just on a call with a gentleman who's the number 2 at Loan Depot. And I don't mean production. I'm talking about number 2 on the board at Loan Depot. And we had a very detailed conversation about the shift in the market. And what he's telling people, you have to understand that right now you're starting like you're brand new. Start like you're brand new. You have all this skill set, but you need to work like you're brand new in the business. And he said, it's definitely a planting season, not a harvesting season right now. And if you can't handle the appetite for that, it's going to be tough for you to grow. And I'm seeing that. I'm going to show you some numbers from one of the branches that we've got some pretty good success in as well. But so for me, obviously, when we talk about numbers in the mortgage industry, that's all my work, is all numbers, whether it's debt to income ratios, loan to values, interest rates, assets. It's all numbers. So this is the one chart, the one site that I look at multiple times a day throughout the day. And Troy and I usually geek out on this a couple times a month. So this is MBS Highway. This is mortgage-backed securities. And it's essentially a report showing me in live time, real time, what's happening with mortgage-backed securities, which green is obviously very good. Today, we had some really interesting data come out, and you'll see there, it just popped up. The Fed rate is being raised by 25 basis points. And what most people don't understand is that has nothing to do with mortgage rates. That's your short-term rates. That's your lines of credit, your HELOCs, your car loans, credit cards, personal loans. So that's going to affect what's happening right now with the overnight lending rates. Mortgage rates are on the upside right now, which 41 basis points means pricing is going to be getting better for clients. You're going to have better rates than you did yesterday or this morning. The reason is because of the way the yields are paid on mortgage-backed securities. And it's like going over the 411 for me to discuss all that right now, but you have my information. I'm happy to go deep with you anytime on that, because I do love that stuff. But what we're seeing is the biggest eroder in mortgage-backed securities is inflation. And the reason for that is that when money becomes more expensive, if I've got money lended out at a 3% rate, and now I can lend it at 5%, my 3% value is no longer consistent. That's why you're seeing banks close, or banks getting cash calls, because they leverage their assets on the current debts they currently have, right? The current liabilities they have. So when inflation increases, it causes scarcity in the market, and it causes eroders of mortgage-backed securities, which in turn causes mortgage rates to climb. And we've seen them anywhere this year from 5.5% to 7.5%. When you see the 5.5% number there in a mortgage-backed security, that's raw pricing. So if you went and bought a mortgage-backed security as investment, you're going to get a 5.5% return based off that security that's being sold. That equates to about a 6.25% interest rate to a borrower. So if you're going to do a loan today, a 30-year fixed loan is around 6.25, depending on credit score adjustments, loan to value, and then it goes on and on from there based off of risk, right? So the more adjustments we have, it's usually more risk-based. When you see the 101.102, that's showing you how much above par that rate is actually making somebody. Most mortgage companies sell rates and they make about 2.5 to 3% on their rate they sell to you. So they make 102 to 103 here. So essentially for this, most companies today, they're going to sell you a 6.25 rate. They're going to charge you 1.5 to 2 points. That's how it all breaks down. Here's the cool thing that's going on right now. And this has been going on a while. I shared this on a call a few months ago. And if anybody was wondering, we are in a recession. We've been in a recession for a long time, but nobody wants to admit it. And here's one of the other definitions of a recession. This is the 10-year treasury. As you'll notice, the 10-year treasury today is paying 3.541, okay, which is substantially high. That's a high number on the 10-year treasury. But look at this. The 2-year is paying more than a 10-year. The 1-year is paying more than a 2-year. We call that an inverted yield curve. So anytime you have an inverted yield curve, that's telling you people are investing more money on the short-term side to get faster returns, which is proof that they believe there's a recession and the market's going to turn in another direction sooner than later. Okay. The other one is GDP, negative GDP, 2 quarters in a row. And we've been there for a while. And depending on what the numbers with employment look like, that changes all the time. And Troy and I don't want to get into that either because the formulas change and whoever's giving the information decides on what they want that to be. So this is what your mortgage, if your mortgage lender's not looking at this every day and understanding it, then they're not doing justice for you or your clients to making sure that they understand what they're actually selling. This would be, if they don't understand about mortgage-backed securities, it'd be like selling a property without looking at the listing and just telling you, here's the price. It's the same thing. So ask those questions to whoever you're in business with, whoever your referral partner is on that. I'm going to stop the screen share here and go into just some stuff that we do for our branches on tracking numbers. All right. So this is the first one we're going to do here.
Hey, Chris, while you're
Yep.
doing that, can you tell us what all that means? Like, does that mean rates are going up or down or sideways?
Rates are getting better as of right now. And what we've had is a lot of volatility in the market, which is the toughest thing for us to sell. And the reason is if I'm selling, if you send me a pre-approval today and I pre-approve the person at 6.25% rate with paying a point, and the market shifts tomorrow, now it's 7%, the chances of them qualifying may not be a good chance to qualify. Now, we did have loan level price adjustments that were going in place for higher debt to income ratios. It was supposed to start on the 15th of this month, so if I brought you in, I pre-approved you and your insurance or taxes came higher, your rate was going to go up if the DTI went up. Now they've moved that to August, and I think they're going to end up getting rid of it because it was essentially reverse redlining. It was just a really tough thing to come across, and it's really hard for us to sell. How can I sell that to you? And then all of a sudden insurance goes up or the taxes are off by a little bit. And now I've got to come back to you and tell you got to pay another point for the loan to work. So that caused some, luckily they actually listened to us this time. So today rates are better. We feel that we're on a better trend. We think that the data that's going to come out in May is the date where we really feel we're going to get some stability in the marketplace, which is good for everybody on this call. All right. So this is the accounts pyramid that we have all of our loan officers and branch managers and teams do. And we track the numbers. Okay. We have what are called channel accounts, top 50 people we do business with, and then prospects. And we want them to track this because a lot of time people don't know most people don't know where their business is coming from. They think they do. And every quarter this is due. And the number of LOs that come to me and go, I thought so-and-so was giving me all the business, and come to find out the other guy I'm doing business with, he sent me more deals. So it's very important for loan officers to understand where their business is coming from and who to take care of. And I'm sure it's the same on the real estate side. Where is your business coming from? And we don't buy leads as a company as a whole. We have some loan officers that may partner with some Zillow and stuff, but we're not a lead gen company. So the data you're going to see is true leads from referral partners. Realtors are number one, but we get a ton of our business from financial advisors, CPAs, estate planning attorneys. Okay, so those numbers are all going to be figured in there. So that's what one looks like. That is just the blank version. If there's any LOs on here and they want some of this data, I can send it to them. Let me pull up the other one real quick here. Stop sharing. Go. So this is for one of my better teams. Okay. So you can see the channel accounts. He gets at least one deal a month from these channel accounts: SBK, the Miller Group, DR Horton. And then he has 3 people that are in his accounts category, which is at least one client close per quarter. Here's the cool thing about this. You see that right there. This guy closes about 12 to 14 transactions a month. So he doesn't have that many channel accounts. He does a good job of spreading that out. Now that protects him, because if he loses one of those accounts, you know, people are fickle, relationships change, things happen, partnerships break up. If you've got all your eggs in one basket, you're going to be in trouble. And that's another reason we want them to be able to evaluate this on a quarterly basis. And it was funny because I went and asked him for his this morning. He goes, "Oh, I haven't done one in a while." I'm like, "I need it in like 30 minutes. I got to call this afternoon. I want to present your numbers." So he got it to me. And then I'm going to show you, let's see if I can find this real quick here. There it is. This is what we do for our branches to be able to tell. And this is one of my branches that's doing really well. Oops. Did it not come up? No, hold on a second. Sorry.
You know what I love about all this is, regardless of industry, numbers are being tracked. Whether we're talking real estate, whether we're talking mortgage world, I mean, we can talk about tracking until the cows come home. I mean, this is Chris, this is perfect. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so this is branch, I call branch number 2, and this is our goal versus actual for 2023. And then I've got closings for 2022, 2021, 2020, and 2019. So you can see they're on track to have a really good 2023. I mean, they're starting out, they're way above the numbers on where they are. And this is March's real numbers right now, and we still have plenty of time left in this month. Okay, I mean, they're going to have a record month for this branch in March, which is big for us because we haven't had a record month in a long time. Now, as a company, we're not going to have a record month, but we're going to be on track. I mean, they're going to eclipse what they did in March 2022, which was a really good part of the year. And I like to tell people we had 2 different years last year. We had January to May, and then we had July to whatever, to yesterday, you know, so it's important to see the growth we've had there. Now, what we've been able to do is we've brought in some better producers into that branch that have come to us from direct lenders because they weren't into the craziness going on with them and all the struggles there. So that we've been able to pull some people into this branch and make it happen. But you can see in 2021, this branch did 880 transactions. I mean, that's pretty solid. And last year we were down to 530. So you can see we felt it later in the year, but we track it all. Leads to close. I mean, everything. And we really want to be around 27 to 30%. Obviously 2021 and 2020 were an anomaly. I mean, your rate, you should have been closing at a higher rate because we had so many refinances. So those are the numbers that I manage. And I also have a thing called the greatness tracker that loan officers, I don't have it up here for you, but loan officers have to turn into me every Monday morning, and it tracks face-to-face appointments. It tracks breaking breads, videos they sent out, handwritten thank you cards, phone calls that they make. And that's sometimes that's a deterrent for people that want to come work for us. And that's okay. If you don't want to do the work, we don't want you. No big deal. And I had somebody the other day I was talking to, they go, "Well, all my employees are 1099. How am I going to do that?" I'm like, I don't understand the difference. Like, if you want to be excellent and perform, these are the requirements to do that, right? Like, NFL players are like 1099. Do they still do the job when they're supposed to? Yes, they are. Right. So if you are leading and managing from a standpoint of being excellent and raising the people around you, they're going to want to do the work required to be the best they can be. Right. And these are just some of the things that we do. And I track some top talent. And notice I said I don't recruit. I'm not recruiting anymore. I'm attracting talent, because when I attract the talent, I attract the avatar that I want, right? I'm getting the people that I want on my team, and not just everybody that wants to work with us. So there's my numbers. I hope I didn't bore you as much as some people get bored with numbers, but I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah. And again, my macro takeaway from all that, and Julie and Troy, I'd love to hear yours. Is it's a different industry. It's the same though. He's tracking. He's tracking numbers. Numbers are telling him a story, going from 880 to 530 and then back down. I mean, it's telling a story. The conversion rates, looking at your percentages, is telling a story. So there's predictability there of what truly is happening. That's the beauty of numbers. What do you guys think? Troy, Julie?
Totally. Yeah. And that's why all of this translates for any CEO anywhere, right? You've got to be tracking your activities to see what it's getting for you. Chris, something you said that I think is so powerful for us to be able to talk to our clients is that stability is easy to sell, volatility isn't. And that's a huge one for our clients to understand. When the volatility goes down is when it stabilizes, and when there's going to be more consumer confidence and they'll be back out. That was good to hear.
Yeah. I mean, it's just hard. It's hard to manage that. Right. And when you've got your neighbor telling you shouldn't go buy a house because X, Y, Z or whatever, they're not listening to the experts out there. I mean, would you listen to your neighbor if he said you probably shouldn't get that toe amputated that looks like it's bad? Like, I mean, like I don't think I would listen to him. Right. So why do they listen to him when they deal with financial issues or real estate?
Wait, Troy has a bad toe? Who has a bad toe here?
Well,
I was gonna say you go straight to the toe, to the feet.
well, hey, it's because I'm still recovering from the Goggins challenge. I'm still wobbling a little bit, so that's what made me think of that. But
toes still black and blue there.
a little bit. But yeah, I think that if we don't come across consistently as an expert, then people aren't going to think that's who we are.
Yeah.
Right. And I share the numbers with you with some of our top producers, not because, oh, look at what they've done, but they know what they're doing because they see the numbers. And when I ask LOs that are struggling, let me see your numbers. I don't have them all. I'm like, okay, that would be probably the reason why they're so bad.
Yeah.
Because, look, if you're having a hard time, do you just stop looking at your checking account? I hope not. I hope not.
A lot of people do though.
I mean,
it's true.
They don't want to see it. They don't want to see it. I want to show something here real quick. I'll give a quick little story. A client of mine, 2019, hated tracking numbers, hated it with a passion. 7.9 million. Okay. 7.9 million. And then we slowly, what was it? Slowly started to baby steps. I think you said baby steps, or Julie, can't remember who said that. Baby stepped our way into building what you're getting ready to see right here. And so went from 7.9 million, and in 2022 did just right around $43 million in sales. All because of this, in my opinion. This is my opinion, but I also worked with this individual that entire time. So this is what we created, right? So this is a snapshot of their numbers, but they could see all of their year-to-date, their budget, their prior year, better or worse. So we could see all of the production. We could see the GCI. We could see the percentage of business of where they all were, and so on and so forth. This was actually 2022, 89% of their business had come from their referrals, from their database, and we were tracking all of that. But I want to show you even more. So this is their P&L. Their P&L gets tracked on a daily basis. They track their expenses daily. Money goes out, money comes in. It has to be put in here to their P&L. Let's go to their sales analysis. So here's volume, GCI, and GCI percent. Now check this out. To Julie's point, this is all of their lead sources. So they track all of their lead sources, their year-to-date production, their budget from that, and then their past year. And then a percentage increase or decrease based on total, and then sellers, and then buyers, and GCI, and it is broken down the exact same way. Then we get to go into the pipeline. And this is a tracking mechanism that regardless of what industry you're in, if you don't have a pipeline, we need to have a conversation because again, a pipeline is telling you everything. So 35 million, there was 2 million in the pipeline, active pending, and then any upcoming listings, any pendings, closed, so on and so forth. And then the cost analysis, we won't get into the details of that, though this is just a high level share of what true tracking can look like if you put it on steroids. And again, they had one of their best years. Now here's a great story. Here's a great story, which isn't so great, but it's a great because they were tracking through February. Our conversations were different. Their business was down 50% year over year. Why do they know that? Because they track their numbers. Well, let's go look at the lead sources. Here's what they found. Their lead sources of referrals was down 80% compared to prior year, same time. So then we had to go into a conversation of what are you doing or what are you going to be doing different so that that number continues to increase. And they were like, we hadn't even thought about it. And these are nearly $50 million producers that were not thinking in terms of change. They were thinking in terms of maintaining, which you can't do. The numbers told them that though, right? The numbers told them that. Okay, do we want to take them anywhere else, coaches? Have we beaten them up a little bit with numbers? Do we want to give any more pain?
I have one more. Let's ease the pain a little bit. Okay. So
yeah.
the other side, right? We're talking about double down on your actions. The other thing you can double down on is your conversions and your skill, right? So tracking your numbers also lets you know how well are you converting, right? So it may not mean you have to do more. You just have to get better at it and convert at a higher level. So you have that choice also, either be better or do more.
And you can't know unless you track.
Exactly. We don't know which.
Yep. By the way, January was not my best month. I went back and looked. It was actually June. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Troy, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, what does everybody on here who has a question, or what do you guys want to hear? I mean, I'm always prepared with market data in terms of, you know, what we think is happening with the market and all of that stuff, but we can also talk more about tracking, or if you guys are market dataed out, we can not go down that road. What do you guys want to hear about?
Now throw in the chat or go ahead and unmute yourself. We've got enough ability here to talk to us. Anybody? Let's see here. We had oh, Jess, yes, that spreadsheet makes my heart so happy. Yes.
I've already made a copy of it and I'm tweaking it so I can send it out with the recording.
I knew you would. Absolutely. Okay, yeah, questions on numbers, questions on tracking, share a story. Anything you guys want to talk about? Go for it.
Troy, I'm going to hit you up to talk about another conversation that we were having earlier, which is how do you take this information of the market, what Chris is saying, what we're watching out there, and then relay it to our clients? Because you were saying that a lot of leaders are hearing that's what their people want to know most, is just how to have that conversation.
Well,
Yeah.
and I would say too, Julie, to that same point, too, what about their teams, right? What about their company?
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, and that's what I had Terrell on my market update on Monday. And the reason he was there is he said he polled his agents in his office, and the number one question they had is, what should I tell my clients about the market? And so I think that's a great point. Chris, I think at the end of the day, I would love to say it has to do with all this complicated stuff, but the reality is, I think the sales in the US at least rise and fall on what interest rates do. And everything that Chris has taught me and that I've learned, I think that interest rates are probably going to trend in the right direction, but there's probably still a bumpy road ahead. But Chris, I'd love for you to give at least your synopsis of where you think those are going to go in the next 3 to 6 months. Your best guess, right? Because none of us, I mean, unfortunately, none of us know.
I thought I knew, and then it changed. Yeah, so I think that the big thing is we're going to have some more tough inflation data next month. Okay. And what most people don't understand is a big part of the inflation data that we see that moves the numbers in the wrong direction is what's called shelter cost. Okay. And that's a lagging indicator of what rental properties are doing. So we had such a massive year over year increase in rental properties, at least in my market in Central Florida, it was 46%. Rentals went up 46% in Central Florida. Think about that, 46%. So that's a lagging indicator. Now in May, that number is going to fall off. So the May 10th number, when the inflation data comes out, that curve is going to be corrected. So that's going to be a big, what we feel will be the number where inflation data will start being more in favor to us and helping us and getting mortgage rates where they're going to be. We also need everybody to admit we're in a recession, because when you're in a recession, interest rates are historically lower. Okay. That's really good for my industry. And we need unemployment data to be actual and real. And I don't want to get into the whole deep with that, but unemployment data right now, they changed the whole formula on how they're figuring that. And they changed it right before the data was released. So the numbers are skewed, but we know there's massive layoffs in the United States. We see it every day on the news, and we need that number to correct a little bit for there to admit there is a recession. So that's going to be part of it. I feel my best guess is rates are going to get better this summer, and they're going to flatline, and they're going to be stable. I think we're going to be in the mid 5s on interest rates. And I think that's where we'll be for a while. And if that's where we are, we can sell it. Like, I can sell any interest rate. When I started in this business, I was selling 9% rates, right? That's because that's what it was. And I didn't know if that was good or not. I had no idea. I just knew that that was the rate that my boss told me to sell everybody. It was 9% today. And I went out and sold a lot of 9% rates. So it really, those of you who live in cold markets, I used this analogy the other day. I lived in cold markets for a long time. And when it gets really cold at first, nobody does anything for a few weeks. And then all of a sudden we just get used to it. It's the same with interest rates, right? They went up really fast. If they'll stay there and be stable, whatever that is, we'll just get used to it. We'll figure it out. Will appreciation slow down? Probably. I'll let Troy go deeper into that, but I think it may slow down a little bit. But I feel that that's what it really comes down to, is stability in the rate market. We feel we're going to be in the 5% range. I hope, for me, it doesn't get there too fast, because every time someone refinances a loan that I closed less than 180 days ago, I've got to pay all the money back they paid us. Be lucky you're in real estate. You don't have to do that, but think about making a 3% commission on $1 million loan, and they refinance it in 180 days, and you got to pay the 3% back. That's no fun.
No, that's great. And I tend to agree with everything I've seen, but real quick, I'll run through what Chris just kind of said to you guys. So this is the breakdown of what the inflation numbers consist of. And you can see that housing is the largest percentage of the inflation numbers. And if we go look at sales, you can see that this is the year over year. So if we go back to last January of 2022, prices were up 15% year over year. If we look at January, and the updated numbers just came out yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to update this. This was from Monday. But the year over year increase in January of this year was only 1.3%. So either this month or next month, we're likely to see this number go negative nationally. Now, here in Central Ohio, for example, we are not probably going to go negative, but in most markets in the US, we're going to go negative. Therefore, this number that's plus 1.3% is going to go negative. Then that gets added into the rent number, which you can see in February was still plus 6%. But if you go back to February of last year, it was plus 11 to 12%. So the average housing for the inflation report that just came out last week had housing up plus 8% for February, which are those two numbers essentially added together. But as soon as, definitely by May, and potentially as soon as April, depending on what sales numbers do, it's probably going to be May, we're going to see that number go negative. And that's going to be a huge influence because of the fact that housing plays such an important role in the inflation numbers. And the Fed The Fed's two main jobs are inflation control and full employment. And so as soon as they see inflation start to fall, they're going to feel more comfortable allowing the economy to do its thing. In terms of pricing, just really quick, and Chris, I wanted to ask you about this, but I feel like in some ways that we're past that point. So I just want to jump. These are some things from a recent conference, some slides from the Keller Williams conference that I just went to, but there were a couple in here that I really think are important. Number one, these are the sides per agent over the last, 40, 50 years. You can see that there's only been, I think actually last year was lower number of sides per real estate agent than ever before, even lower than 2008. So if you're feeling a pinch, that's because there's way more agents compared to number of sales that are happening. So that's one thing. And then, but because of volume, we're not feeling as much of a pinch, by the way. But the biggest reason why distressed sales are super low, so anybody that says that it's going to be 2008 over again, say distressed sales compared to 2008, super low. But the biggest reason why I don't think that we're going to see deflation or downward pressure on housing prices for any extended period of time is this right here. If you look at the number of homes that were being built, historically, they like to see around 1 million homes a year. And this is how many houses were being built from 2008 all the way through 2019. So you see, we've jumped a little bit above that for the last 2 years, but really mostly just in 2021. But I feel like if the builders around where you live are doing anything like what the builders are doing around where we live, is last fall, they all freaked out and quit starting new houses unless they had contracts on them. And so what that's going to do is severely limit, because not everybody wants to wait 12 to 18 months to complete a build from ground up. There were a few builders that kept building spec homes, but I think we'll probably see this number here drop back below 1 million. So I believe that there's 3 talking points that we have. Number one, when a buyer asks, why should I buy now instead of waiting? Number one is that due to overall housing supply, dude, Zoom is freaking me out here. If I do a thumbs up or wave, it makes me wave anyways. But number one is that housing is severely undersupplied in almost all of the markets, major markets in the US and nationally, and therefore pricing is a supply and demand game. In 2008, we had a ton more houses for sale than we had buyers, and therefore prices went down. Right now, even though we have 25 to 30% fewer sales happening in our market, we still have supply that is about 10 to 20% of what it was in 2010. And that means it was 80% more then. So we're not anywhere near a supply and demand issue. Number two, everything is driven by interest rates in terms of demand from buyers. And so if your buyers in your market are worried about interest rates and no one's buying anything, the best buy you can make is the one right before rates go down. Because as soon as rates go down, like Chris said, and we saw it happen in January, that's why the February real estate numbers that just came out were so much better. Because in January, rates went down and a bunch of buyers re-entered the market. Then in February, rates went back up. We saw sales stall again. And so now there are some more opportunities out there. If you buy in an environment where rates are higher and then wait 180 days, Chris, to refinance your mortgage when rates go down, you've now bought in a market where there's not nearly as much competition. And then 6 months from now, you can still get that better rate. But if you wait until rates go down to make a buying decision, you will be back in multiple offers. If your market isn't already there, ours is low enough inventory where we're still seeing a lot of multiple offers. I saw an agent in our market last week had 90 showings on one house and 22 offers, even at a 6.5% rate. So to Chris's point, people are going to get used to it. And the people that have the 4 Ds affect them, diapers, disease, divorce, and death, are going to be buying. And if there's not enough supply, then your clients who just want to move are going to keep getting beat out and prices are going to keep going up.
Yeah, I think too on the other reason for that with the builder side of it is they stopped building those homes because the carrying cost with the Fed continuing to raise the rates in their lines of credit. So if you have buyers right now that are concerned about where the rate is today and you're not able to negotiate in a 2-1 buy down, you need to figure out how to way to do that. If your lending partner is not offering a 2-1 buy down option for you, it's a great way to put someone in the market with what rates would have been 6-7 months ago. And we all know the data trending shows where it's going to end up at. And the cool thing about a 2-1 buy down is it comes from the seller. So say I got a $12,000 credit 2-1 buy down. It buys that rate down 2% the first year, 1% the second. If they sell it or refinance it before the time goes up, they get the money back. It goes towards their payoff. It's escrowed. So it's not like it's something they lose. If they take that seller credit and they pay points on the rate to lower it down, it's way more expensive to do that. But if they sell the house or refinance it, they lose that money, right? It doesn't go away. I mean, it goes away. So those are just other options to get people in the game right now. Excuse me. And obviously there's always the cost of waiting. What's it going to cost you to wait based on appreciation? And we've got some great calculators. If you want to message me, I'm happy to share some of that stuff with you as well.
Got it. Coaches, well done. That was fun. What we got? Any comments here before we conclude from any of our guests? Go ahead and chat it or throw it into unmute yourself and come on board with us. Ask away.
My voice is not strong, but I will say that when they talk about indicators, and in that CSU chart I sent you, they said when it all comes down to it, there are only 2 because all of them come from that. Making calls, setting appointments.
Yep. That's it. Yep.
Real simple.
Barry was the source of the document that you're going to get here. So be on the lookout for that, Barry. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Anything else? Anything else? Excellent. Coaches, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your valuable information. That was incredible. Good data. I got a couple pages of notes here myself. Couple things. I want to give some housekeeping here on the next Real Talk. So the next Real Talk, we're going to talk about let's see here, systems and building and scaling. Kim, you want to tell us a little bit about that? Coach Kim here. Coach Kim, everybody.
Yeah, so systems, yes, and I would say building a scalable business so that anything that is repeatable, you have a system around it.
Gotcha.
Now, anything that you do more than one time during the day, it's systematic.
That's good. We'll talk more about that. Great. Kim, you want to plug, you have an event coming up. Are you going to be somewhere where they can watch you Zoom, or is that only in person?
It's in person. Come on. Who's
okay.
coming? Who goes up north in the middle of winter? I do, because I'm in Wisconsin and I'm not far enough north. So I'm going to drive 5 hours north to Minnesota.
Excellent. Love it.
Anybody want to come to the Twin Cities? Let me know.
Well, again, everybody, thank you for your time today. This has been incredible. I want to point out one thing here is what was really neat about the coaches that we had on there is all of those coaches all coach each other. So Coach Troy coaches Julie. I coach Chris. Chris coaches Troy. Jess coaches us all every Friday. So, I mean, we're a bunch of coaches here that love to get coached. So I thank all of you coaches. Thank you all for being here and all of our participants today. This has been a Real Talk from I Love Coaching, and we'll do it again next month. See you guys.
Cool. Thank you.
You all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Great job. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.